now my second guest needs no introduction at all, but I'll certainly introduce John Halamka, CIO of Beth Israel Deaconess. And thank you very much for joining the broadcast, John.
Well, a pleasure to be here, and hopefully I still have a voice.
You do, my friend. Excellent. So I think the biggest thing here, we have a recurring theme for all of our guests this year, and that's really focusing on, we want to get best practices and actionable intelligence. But before we dive in too deep, what are some of the big healthcare and health IT trends or opportunities that you're seeing out there, even with your community at Beth Israel, or in the industry?
Sure, as Steve just said, it's no longer sufficient to look at data in one silo. We're looking at the patient over the course of their lives. As Secretary Burwell said, we're going to move from fee-for-service to this idea of being paid for quality and outcomes. And that is an imperative to share data from every site of care and make sure we're keeping it healthy. And that means embracing patients and families and patient-generated data, moving to the cloud and moving to mobile. So I think what we're seeing in this HIMSS is we're breaking out from intra-operability to interoperability.
That's excellent. Where do standards come into play there?
Now, standards, of course, are necessary but not sufficient.
Yep.
And so imagine that Joe's Endoscopy Shack opens up in your neighborhood.
Yep.
Now, if we had the perfect standard, would you send data to Joe's? I don't know. Right? So there are policies, guidelines. So I think as a community, we are now developing the kind of trust fabrics to understand who should get the data and what can be done with it.
What are some of the avenues that you would point people to? Because we have a large listenership, but mainly because of HIMSS, a lot of hospitals and health systems and some larger practices. Where would people go to learn more about some of those aspects there?
So one of the more exciting aspects of standards, and I recognize standards can be a dry topic.
I love it, but yes.
Is the Argonaut Project.
Excellent.
And so www.argonautproject.org. This is not a new organization. It is not seeking money. It is simply a project of Cerner, Epic, Meditech, Athena, McKesson, SureScripts, academia, industry, and government coming together. And you'll see on those pages, what are the standards? How are we going to use them? How is it going to create a Facebook, Amazon, Google-like experience? It doesn't require teams of PhDs. 26-year-olds in a garage can use these new standards and create the next great app.
That's excellent. So what are the ways that you're engaged in this and you're addressing? Because you wear a lot of hats in the industry as well. So what are some of the ways that you're addressing?
So I am a physician.
Yep.
I am a husband, I am a father, and I'm a patient. And so the best thing I can do is to make sure the experience of all the patients at Beth Israel Deaconess mirrors that which I'd want for my own family. And that means mobile apps that enable you to get your data and push your data. It means creating mechanisms by which your preferences are respected. Giving patients in our ICUs iPad apps so they can see the progress of their loved ones. So we try to be a little edgy. It takes a little bit of risk taking, because with the risks, you can get the big rewards.
No, that's fantastic. So you're engaged in the Argonaut Project personally, correct?
Correct.
What are some of the other areas or committees that you're engaged in? Because you worked a lot on I think it was HITSP back in the day, but what are some of the ones that you're engaged in today?
So I served the Bush administration for 4 years, the Obama administration for 6 years, and just last month I handed the baton of the HIT Standards Committee off to Arian Malik and Lisa Gallagher. Excellent. And that was because I'd hit my term limit. So now the next generation will harmonize standards. So what that means is I now have the freedom to go internationally. And so I'm up in Canada, I'm in the UK, I'm in China, because really healthcare is a global issue.
It is.
And so if I can make a difference by making healthcare seamless across the world, that's a noble goal.
That's fantastic, John. So what are what are 2 or 3 best practices? This is my final question, but what are 2 or 3 best practices that you would offer? You do a lot of speaking as well, but if you're speaking to a CIO of a progressive organization or a leading facility, and what advice would you give to them, and kind of what are some of the actionable next steps that they can take? Because like you brought it up earlier, not only can standards might be dry to some people, but it's also daunting. I mean, that's a big goal of trying to create interoperability in your community, and you can certainly engage, Commonwealth, or you can engage Sequoia. There's little things that you can do. But what are the 2 or 3 best practices that you may mention to somebody? Say, hey, these are the things that you can do next. Anybody can do it.
So healthcare is getting bigger. Mergers and acquisitions and associations more common. The cloud is something you need to embrace. And the only way I can be agile enough to deploy the records where I need them, when I need them, is to move to cloud. There's risk, but think about it. Who is smarter The 5 guys who work for you or the 5,000
That's right.
that work for Amazon. So embrace the cloud. Embrace mobile. Patients and their families are not using desktops. And as you pointed out, with these evolving standards, FHIR, with some of the enablers like SureScripts, Commonwealth, Sequoia, Direct Trust, you'll find there's more fluidity that enables you to embrace apps, modules. It won't be just one-size-fits-all computing from a single vendor in the future.
That's fantastic, John. No, fantastic advice. So cloud, mobile. What about FHIR? Tell me a little bit in closing on FHIR, about FHIR, because FHIR is getting a lot of press. It's part of the Argonaut Project, obviously, but where are we going with FHIR, and what do you think some of the next steps are around FHIR across the industry?
So I am an MIT-trained engineer, physician, entrepreneur, and it does require all of those techniques and technologies to understand some of our older standards. But wouldn't we want the future standards to be understood by those without MDs, PhDs, or vast amounts of technical expertise? And FHIR is that idea, that we will take an allergy, let's say, and agree. An allergy is the thing you're allergic to, the reaction you had, when it happened, who saw it, and your level of certainty. And so we can tell that 26-year-old, if you create an app and it's going to show 5 things, it'll be useful to the patient. No PhD needed. And that's the whole FHIR concept. Accelerate our progress by making it simpler.
That's fantastic, John. Very well said, very well put. And I think everybody, because I get a lot of questions around just, why FHIR and how do we engage? And so I certainly do point them to the Argonaut Project as a good starting point. But John Halamka, thank you very much for joining the show today, and we'll see you back, I'm sure.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, John. Take care.